Hey everyone, it's True Review! Right here, with another top 10 list. You know, it can be pretty exciting to hear that an awesome game is in the making, and even more so after we get to see a sweet trailer that showcases absolutely everything that we were hoping to see. But then there are times when a trailer doesn't reflect the actual game itself, or when the game developers make an announcement about their game, only for it to then turn out to be not true when the game is finally released. So as April Fool's Day was the other day, which also happened to be Easter Sunday, and I'm going to move on before the temptation of suggesting that Jesus' resurrection was a joke takes over me, I think it's more appropriate to talk about the top 10 times game developers lied to us about their games. Hit it! Thief! The original Thief games marked a groundbreaking milestone in the stealth genre. The Dark Project in particular was arguably one of the first games to include features such as sound and light mechanics that affected how noticeable you were. The maps were huge, the weapon and tool inventory at your disposal was large, and the enemy AI's patrol routes were unpredictable, leading to the player being constantly on guard. But the first few games, and yes, I include Deadly Shadows among them, weren't exactly a walk in the park. After all, you're a thief, not a soldier, so combat was supposed to be avoided at all times, while sneaking and remaining undetected was paramount. However, after what felt like an eternity, the Thief franchise came back from its hiatus with a sort of a reboot into the series. This game promised to be just as challenging as its predecessors, but surprise surprise, the game's difficulty was dumbed down to the point where you could quite literally just beat everyone up with no problem at all. In addition to this, the game's maps were shrunk down, the gameplay became very linear, and the enemy AI, which wasn't fantastic back in the day, somehow became even worse. Mass Effect 3! I've talked about Mass Effect 3 quite a bit on this channel. I'm one of those guys who's more likely to defend this game rather than saying that it was a piece of shit. It wasn't a piece of shit. Putting the ending to the side, the game was actually pretty good. Not as good as Mass Effect 2, mind you, but there's still a lot to enjoy. And the build up towards the end was fantastic as well. However, knowing that this was the last one in the trilogy, BioWare made sure to address the issue of the ending before release, telling us that we would be given the opportunity to choose between multiple endings. Different multiple endings, mind you. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case upon release, as the three endings that Mass Effect 3 originally had were essentially the same ending, just with some different colour schemes to it. Same cutscene, same things happen, different colours in the background. Had it not been for the ending itself, Mass Effect 3 might have been widely regarded as a great game, but here we are, I suppose. Duke Nukem Forever! No, Duke Nukem took forever. With an insane development cycle of somewhere in the ballpark of about 14 years, nothing was ever going to live up to the hype that was the next Duke Nukem. Unfortunately, however, the end product was the complete opposite of what we were promised. We were told the Duke would be returning in all of his glory, with blood, gore and carnage everywhere, and with the odd lovable pun thrown in. What we got was some random levels surgically stitched together in an unnatural way, like the level design equivalent of the Human Centipede, most weapons removed from previous games, and where you could only carry a small number instead of a whole arsenal, and of course, bugs were abound. It also didn't help that the game starts off by giving you the option of throwing actual shit around a bathroom. Spore! Spore never changes. Ah, wrong game. But you know what? That's still sort of right. Because this game was never changed to be like how it was advertised. Spore was pretty much advertised to us as the be-all, end-all game of true sandbox games, where you could create and nurture your own created life form, which would then spread across the globe and further into space. It sounded so freaking cool when it was first announced. It's just a shame that it doesn't play like that at all. Many have already said it, but they're right, so here it is again. Spore is not a sandbox game. It's a collection of shitty mini-games that have been slapped together and are not worth your time. Spore was a huge disappointment and is not worth considering. Next! Fable! Peter Molyneux sure does love to talk shit. I don't exactly hate the guy, as I know some people do, but I think the problem he has is that he comes up with all these really great and awesome sounding ideas, then goes to the press and goes, "This is what we're gonna do and it's going to be great," before returning to the company office where his co-workers turn to him and go, "Pete mate, you do realise we don't have the budget to do all of that? We'd really appreciate it if you discussed these ideas with us first, before making an announcement." Pretty much every game made by this guy, with the exception of a few early titles, fall under this same issue. It's a lie, sure, but I don't think it's a malicious one. However, it does mean that most games that have been produced by him were set to contain certain features that just never came to be. Fable 1 was probably the worst for this. We were promised many things that just never happened, such as being able to plant an acorn that would eventually grow into a tree as the game went on. Given the nature of this video, it's safe to say that this never happened, nor was it included as a mechanic in the end product. Battlefield 3! Now some of you might be thinking that EA's bad reputation is a recent thing, but I'm here to remind you today that Electronic Arts have been employing downright awful business practices for many upon many a year now as is, and we're seeing it again today. In case you missed it before. Battlefield 3 was released back in 2011. However, in June of that same year, EA made an announcement in an attempt to boost their sales of the game via PlayStation 3. By ordering the PS3 version of the game, players would also receive a bundled copy of another game in the series, Battlefield 1943. Huh. 2 games for the price of 1. Not bad, EA, not bad. Except when the game was released, those who did buy the game for the PS3 soon found out that it did not come with this other game. No apology, no announcement, nothing. EA just simply did not include the game and said nothing about it after it was released. What they did say, however, was that those who bought the PS3 version would be entitled to early access to the DLC for Battlefield 3. An entitlement that they already had, and where no discount was offered for said DLC. It was only after a massive backlash from the community and the threat of a class action lawsuit did EA finally send out copies of the originally promised game. I would love to say that EA had learnt their lesson by now, but the disaster that was both the Star Wars Battlefront games suggests otherwise. Mighty No. 9! Probably the most offensive game to have come from crowdfunding, this game was advertised to be a modern, generation-style version of the Mega Man games, but turned out to be so dull in terms of everything. Story, graphics, voice acting, gameplay, control mechanics. And with parts of the development budget of the game going into other related projects, meant that this siphoned money was going to lead to the game being downgraded, even though it hadn't come out at that point. Naturally, fans were outraged when it was finally released, and since then, Mighty No. 9 is still to this day widely recognised as one of the most insulting cases where the developer lied about their own game. Aliens, Colonial Marines. And now we move on to the worst cases on this list, and we kick it off with Aliens, Colonial Marines. This is a classic example of why game trailers aren't to be trusted. Movies have trailers, games have demos. That's been the rule for many years now. A movie trailer shows you small bits of what you'll get to experience by going to see it. A game trailer shows you nothing of what you'll experience if you go to buy it. Only a demo lets you experience bits of it. But Gearbox went one step further by making their game demo look better than the final product. Upon release, gamers everywhere were asking themselves the same question. I seem to remember this game looking and playing better in the demo. What the fuck is happening here? The final product received a generous downgrade in terms of graphics and dynamic lighting, the gameplay was dull, Michael Biehn didn't sound like he appreciated being there, and the AI, both friendly and hostile, was laughable. There is so much proof to show that Gearbox fucked this one up, yet they still to this very day have not apologised for their screw up, still claiming that Colonial Marines is a great game. It's not, by the way, just don't play it. Watch Dogs! Much in the same way as Aliens Colonial Marines, Watch Dogs trailers and demo looked, felt, and played better than the final product. What was more of a kick to the swollen crotch was that, as if adding insult to injury, the PC version got a further downgrade with a 30 frame cap in order to not make the console version look inferior. And there we were for years, hearing and seeing about how awesome Watch Dogs was going to be, only for that exact experience to never be fully realised. In fact, the name Watch Dogs nowadays still brings up angry emotions for many of us, and it didn't help that the actual game wasn't even that great anyway. It wasn't bad, but absolutely nowhere near as good as the media was making it out to be. You don't need to play this one is what I'm saying, GTA's better. Another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust. No Man's Sky! And finally, in at number 1 is the single greatest offense that gamers have ever experienced before. No Man's Sky promised us so much in terms of content, what we could do, where we could go, and what we would find. If this game was released in the exact same state that had been promised to us, then this game might have become one of the greatest games of all time and would still be widely played today, many more years to come. But with the exception of being able to travel to other planets and collecting resources, you can't do anything that was promised to us. In fact, traveling to other planets and collecting resources pretty much sums up the game. Like, there is f*** all to do aside from that. And that's not unique. Elite Dangerous lets you do that and more. However, the developers were caught right out lying on several occasions after the game was released. Such as, in one example, we were told that you could potentially meet other players while playing, though the odds of that happening were slim due to how large the game was. That was quickly uncovered as a lie when players found out that even when 2 players were in the exact same spot, they couldn't see each other. The problem this game has is that it's freaking huge, but it doesn't have much substance to it. Too much space, not enough stuff in that space. But it doesn't help that we'd been promised that there would have been a lot more content and activities present in this game, despite the fact that almost none of it was actually there, and still isn't. And for that reason alone, No Man's Sky makes it in at number 1 on this list. And we're done for another video, but if you're freaking huge and don't have much substance as well, then like this video and subscribe to this channel. Don't forget that I'm on Twitter and Patreon, and you can find those links in the description below. But until next time, see ya! Sometimes I think this life is killing me.